no one wants to leave home. War torn or not, if the war stopped tomorrow, we would all go back. I don't know how to explain it more than you grieve every day. I would hope that one day for our children's children there'll be a Sudan again. For now, it's utter sadness. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah.
No, I just
I'm sorry.
Hi guys, welcome back to Tea at 4. This is a special episode where we've partnered with UK for UNHCR. It might be a bit different to your normal listen, but it's a really important one.
The conversation that we're having today is to raise awareness for the crisis in Sudan, and more importantly, what it means to be forced to be displaced. To help us understand that, we're joined today by Basma. Welcome, Basma.
Welcome, Basma.
Thank you for coming on Tea at 4. Would you mind introducing yourself to our listeners, please?
Yeah, sure. My name is Basma Khalifa. I am a director and a writer, and I am from Sudan.
Incredible. And for those people who don't know what is happening in Sudan, would you mind describing it not in the sense of headlines or news or what we might see on social media? How has it personally affected you and your family?
So the war in Sudan kicked off, I would say in about 2023.
Okay.
It was a bit of an explosion for all of us. I think we always knew murmurings that something was going to happen and something was coming, but I think you don't really understand what the scale of that is going to be. For me and my family, most all my family are in Sudan. My father's side are from a small part of Sudan, well, not even that small, but a part of Sudan called Omdurman in North Sudan. And then my mother's side are from Khartoum, which is the capital of Sudan. And for all of us, it was quick fire decisions on trying to get out. Who do you get out? How do you get them out? What ways do you do it? Where do you go? What are the different options? It was like panic stations. I'm not going to lie. It was sort of every day you wake up and you're like, who is where? And we come from really big families. So it's not that you're just thinking of, your granny and your grandfather or just your immediate cousins. You're also thinking of your cousin's cousins. You're thinking of my parents and all their aunties and uncles and then all their other halves and then all their families and then all their kids and then their kids. So there's a lot of us. And so you're always just naming people and finding out where they are and how to get them out.
I was wondering, has there been any stories regarding the war that have been really impactful to you or that have stuck with you that you would share with us today?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of awful stories of things that have happened to my family. I think most notably the one that I've talked about before is that my cousins and my aunt live quite near the army barracks, where quite a lot of the trouble was, and we had talked a lot about moving them and how to get them out. And they were like, no, let's just stay, it's too dangerous. But at a point I was like, something needs to happen. And actually I remember I was sitting in Soho in a coffee shop here in London, and my aunt rang me and she was like, okay, they're going to leave today, we're going to get them out, just keep your phone on you. And I remember I was like, okay, yeah, fine, we need to get them out. There was kind of, I guess, about 8 or 9 of them at that point, maybe a bit less, can't remember. And I got a phone call while I was sitting in just a normal working day on a Wednesday, and they were like, your aunt's been killed. And I remember being like, what do you mean? They were meant to have gone, they're meant to have got out, they're meant to have left. And her daughters got into the car. She went to actually close the door of the house, which is crazy to be like, oh, I need to close the door of the house that we might never return to. And she was shot as she was closing the door. I think at this point they're just, it's just killing to kill. You don't even really know who they're killing. But they had to flee straight away. So they had to leave her body and they had to flee. My other cousin, I think the bullet and shrapnel from whatever the explosion sort of hit her legs, so she could barely walk, but we got them out. And then my uncle went back to get my aunt's body when it was a little bit safer and it had calmed down. But yeah, we've lost at least 4 or 5 family members in sort of the shootings and the bombs and explosions and whatever else there's been. So it's been really sad. It's awful. Yeah, it's awful in a weird way. Sudanese people are very resilient. So you're almost mourning while you're also being grateful that not everyone died, which is a really weird way to look at it. But at some point, I think the Islamic side of Sudan and most of North Sudan, most of that, my family are all Muslim. Yeah. And so they have, religious bias, I like to call it, where you're always kind of like, well, thank God, we made it. Thank God we're safe. Thank God we got out. And there's not really enough time to grieve when you need to survive.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it is in war. The grief is distracting. Actually, we need to get safe. So we mourned it here. I think, I don't know my cousins now. I mean, they'll never be the same. That was their only parent, but it's been, it's been horrible. Actually, really, really horrible.
So your family came here from Sudan themselves. Is like, what's your background?
What's my story? So I actually was born in Saudi Arabia. I was born in Riyadh. My parents were working there at the time, and then we moved to Northern Ireland, hence the accent, when I was about 3, with my 2 brothers, and we lived in Northern Ireland until we were I was about 11, 12. We moved to Scotland for about 7 years, and I've been in London for about 10. Do the math, because I'm not going to tell you my age. So we came as refugees. We came to the UK as refugees. My father was a doctor, and then we worked our way. I mean, I didn't work my way up. I was a child, but my dad worked his way up to being a consultant doctor, and eventually we got our British citizenship and our passports and everything else. But yeah, we came here as refugees.
Privilege we have is that we can't even begin to fathom that story.
Yeah.
And I always think, like, you talk about your aunt going back to close the door, those kind of like natural human reactions. Like, what do you do in that situation? What do you grab? Like, and I can't even imagine it as a woman. Like, there's so much more things you have to think about. Like, you've got to think about your personal hygiene levels and all the stuff that's important as a woman, as well as like if you're the family member.
Yeah, it's like, do you go like practical? Do you go sentimental? When these, like, with those conversations with your family that were beginning to even have those thoughts of fleeing, like, what is any of that stuff going through their heads, or is it purely just survival?
It's a weird one, because I think about this a lot, about the sadness of stuff, which sounds really silly, and like, really, if the human's alive, it should be enough. But I do think just before the war began, my aunts and grandmothers and stuff had left me quite a few things that, you know, one day you'll wear this on your wedding day, or one day you pass this down to your children, or one day this will be yours. And there was actually a specific necklace that my aunt, who I was really close to, had sort of said she would leave for me when she was dying. And I was so excited about having that necklace. And I still think about it all the time. I'm really sad about that necklace. And those were our family homes. We went to Sudan every single year growing up, every year. So that, you know, I try to say to people, like, think about not, you know, when we plan like Christmas or you plan your Easter holidays and you're like, oh, I'm going to go to my mum's, I'm going to go to my dad's, I'm going to go to my grandmother's, like, that's gone. So all the memories that lived in that house or lived in those houses or lived in that neighborhood are just in our heads, because we will never be able to go back to them. And so there's a really weird mourning of the future that could have been. And of the things, of the family photos, of the, you know, Sudan, like most kind of like ethnic countries, there's just like a lot of memories held in like the gold and the materials and the things that your family sort of keep for you and pass down through generations. And so it's generational homes, but it's also generational stuff. I know it's just stuff, and I try to tell myself all the time it's just stuff, but I think it's like someone saying, oh, my grandmother gave me this ring.
I think that's a very human response to have, because everyone, I think, automatically thinks, oh, I want to grab my photographs, I want to grab this that my dad gave me, my mum gave me. And the last thing you actually think about is a passport or a personal document, which is, I guess, in these situations, the most important thing to grab. And that did happen. My cousin, whose mother was killed, she forgot her passport in running out of the house, and then they get to the border trying to get into Egypt, and she doesn't have a passport. And for a lot of the boys also, they weren't getting in. The girls, women and children being prioritized. So then families are being broken up, and you've got these 16-year-old boys who can't get through the border and have to stay at the border for a while. And then Egypt closed their borders because it was just an influx. So Sudan's a big country. There's a lot of people, influx of people trying to get in, and they couldn't manage the amount of people that were getting in. And so there is all those legal things that you have to think about and how to do it. But you literally work day to day. And out with my own family, I was also working with various like other charities and people just trying to help get buses, and you know, the buses were getting really expensive, and it's sort of, a lot of people have nothing and can't afford anything. So us as people here, like the diaspora, we went into overdrive of fundraising just to be like, hey, I'm going to transfer you £1,000, get your family on this bus, you need to get out. So
a lot of it was the practical sense. You're right. The passports, so basic. The clothes on your back and your passports. No one traveled with bags and bags of things. There's not room on buses for bags and bags of things. So take a backpack and you take your most important items and you go. But that moment you close that door, you leave your whole life behind.
Yeah.
It's really, and you arrive at the border in Egypt and you're like, now what?
Yeah.
Now what?
What do we have?
Well, there's a stat from the UNHCR that 12 million people internally and externally from Sudan are now displaced. Like, and then begs the next question, like you said you were trying to support from over here.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what the support was like there, or if anything was being provided?
I mean, I think it's really hard because you do have organizations like the UNHCR who work on the ground, and it's really helpful for those organizations to be on the ground. There's obviously a lot of people who are able to leave, but just because they leave doesn't mean they don't need support. Once you enter a country like Egypt or Oman, or you go to the south, wherever you go, Chad, wherever you go, these countries also can't just start throwing money and give you accommodation. It's not like you're coming to the UK where it's like you might potentially get accommodation. It doesn't work the same way. So the support from organizations like the UNHCR, like, is vital. It's a lifeline. And so I do think that I don't think people really understand that even if you get out, it doesn't mean you got out. Like it's about also rebuilding your life. And that's the hardest part, is the rebuild of everything you would have had. And not even that, it's, you know, a lot of my cousins were in education. They were middle of their universities. Like, so it's kind of like, oh, we're going to go to another university. How much does that cost? How do we graduate? How do we get an education? It's like being an adult who's kind of like born again, if you know what I mean. Like, you're starting from scratch again, you're starting your life again, but you don't have the comfortability of sort of being a child and someone looking after you. There's no one looking after you. So you've got to figure it out. You've got to adult quick. And I think for a lot of my cousins, unfortunately, they had to grow up quick.
And less like adrenaline to go, but you just don't, do you? And like, it's so hard to put yourselves in that situation. Like this, my heart breaks for them that they've had to go through that, because
no one wants to leave home. No one wants to go. If it was not my family, it's all the families in Sudan, and I want to go back. Like, we all want to go back, war torn or not. If the war stopped tomorrow, we would all go back. Like, that's our home, and that's where we want to be, and that's where all our memories are, and that's where our lives are. So this isn't a case of like, okay, I want to rebuild our lives somewhere else. We would be happy to rebuild there if we could. And I think that's what people don't understand. No one wants to be displaced. Everyone wants to be where they are. They don't have a choice. And so that's a huge thing that I try to tell people and teach people, that this is no one's best option. No one wants this option. No one wants to be in a different city or a different country.
No, you put it so, like, visually for me, especially saying about your cousins. Like, I think people imagine when people flee from conflict, like, I don't know, the visual of like someone that's in distress, but it's like, no, these are people that are living their normal lives just like us. And then suddenly you're given an emergency kit, and it's like with a sheet, which is essentially like a tent, like cooking utensils, things like that. I just can't even fathom. It's like, you still want to carry on living your life with dignity, but all you've literally got on you is what you've been given. That's why I guess aid is so important in like giving you the tools to not just survive for now, but like thrive in when you're able to and you're in safety and things like that.
You're spot on. It's exactly that. Like, you have to think, if you could even humanly put yourself in the position, think like you wake up tomorrow and everything that you have and everything in your life that you've built as an adult is just gone. It's gone in the blink of an eye. And the idea is, how would you even start again? Like, what does that even look like? And that's why having on the ground or having these organizations are a vital lifeline for people, because we're literally starting from nothing. And uncontrollably and unsensibly and unfairly starting from nothing. And so if the aid can be provided just to get people on their feet, these organizations aren't giving out houses, they're not giving out bank balances full of money. We're giving basic aid to just like get from day to day. And now you're looking at people that were flourishing in their countries and living well, to survival. And it's pure survival. And the idea of, we're so disconnected as a community now. It's 12 million people, is an insane amount of people that we're all just trying to grab onto each other and hold on to each other and connect in different ways and support each other. But the nucleus of home is gone. And I guess for people listening to this or watching this, it's that if you think about losing home and how much that's the place everyone comes back to, and that's the place you find yourself, and that's your safety, and that's your circle, if that is gone, where do you begin to sort of understand yourself and understand your identity and understand who you can be if you don't have a safe ground to start from?
Yeah. I read a stat online that more than half of the people displaced in Sudan are women, which instantly I feel that connection there, obviously. But I read more to that, and it's so much more vulnerable than that. It makes them more susceptible to gender-based violence. They don't have access to like healthcare, like the hospitals and stuff aren't functioning. Things like menstrual items you don't have access to. I don't know, I guess when I approach this conversation, you don't really understand the impact of the small things we take for granted, like a period pad. And when it comes to things like aid, there's this separation of us because we're here and Sudan because it's so far away. But the act of like, if I was in a girl's bathroom and someone needed a tampon or a pad and I had one in my, I'd instantly go looking for it. So I guess, is there frustration in you? There's not that instant want from people that aren't directly linked to or aren't directly informed about what's going on in Sudan, that aren't wanting to help?
Thing is, I think you can not know and still have humanity.
Yeah.
I think you don't need to know about the war and the numbers and who's in charge and why it happened and what you don't. That shouldn't be the reason to have human behavior, which is someone's suffering and I want to help them.
Yeah.
Like that. It's, for me, it's two very different things. So if we can put aside the not understanding, even though great, if you understand or want to understand, please do.
Yeah.
But if you don't, if you just take it to a really human level, you're right. As a woman, I would never want another woman to not be able to get a period pad, to not be able to wash yourself properly, to not be able to have the things you needed for the amount of women that are giving birth that don't have what they need when after birth, or their babies who don't have what they need after birth. So it's very basic human decency. And so I do think actually for every person who is on their period and can pick out a tampon or pick out a pad, and to think, wow, there's so many women in the world that can't just pull this out of their bag. And that doesn't require you understanding war. That just requires you understanding humanity.
100%.
I guess my question is like, what do you think the UK should know about Sudan? Because I'm sure there's a lot of misinformation out there, and perhaps like that lack of sympathy or that lack of like wanting to help, connecting is due to that.
You know, the funny thing is when I go anywhere in the world and they're like, oh, where are you from? And I'm like, oh, I'm from Sudan. And the thing is, if you're in an Arabic country, they always say, oh, Nas Taibin. And Nas Taibin is always like, oh, they're such nice people. And the thing about Sudanese people is we're so gracious and so giving and so kind and actually so bubbly. And that's why I think this war has been so interesting, because it's like, even I'm in awe of us. And us, I say, is a very top line, because it's not I'm not in it. I've suffered loss, but it hasn't directly happened to me in the same way. I've not been on the ground. So I think from a humanity point of view, is just looking at these as just people who didn't have a choice and were unfortunately in a country which was not functioning the way it should. But they're so kind and so loving and so warm and just want to be good people. And I don't know how to explain how beautiful culture is. And also Sudan, like a lot of people think Sudan is just like, oh yeah, people kind of know it's quite a big country, but like the original pyramids were in Sudan. The Nile meets in Sudan. Like Sudan is mineral rich, gold rich. Like it's a beautiful place. It has a lot of resources. We sit on the Nile, and it is such an important part of the nucleus of North to East Africa, that I just think it deserves to be preserved, and it deserves to be looked after, and the people deserve it, and it's not their fault. And I think when I want people to always take away is it's no one's fault when they're displaced. It's without their control. They're not in control of this. They don't want that to happen, and kindness deserves kindness. And so I always think, if you're a kind person, be kind to others. And they're just nice people. They just deserve to have a safe life. It's not even a flourishing life. I'm not even saying like an expensive life. I'm just saying a safe life. People deserve safety. And if 12 million people and counting aren't safe, we failed as humanity, that we are all walking around not caring that other human beings in the other part of the world aren't safe. It's our responsibility as the people who are safe to be able to give that to others, because we're like, it sounds cliche to say, but we're one human race. So you should care, because if it happened to you, you would want people to care.
Yeah.
And you just happen to be lucky enough that it hasn't happened to you.
Yeah. And I guess it's one thing to be saved and be supported whilst you're in that conflict. What has life been like for you and your family since you've come to the UK, or you've reached a point of safety? It's not, I guess it's not just like a deep sigh of relief. It's like a continual piece of work or thing that you need to.
It's just it's continuous grief, I would say. I think we all live in such grief. I think there's such a level of sadness. Like, this has been going on for so many years, because regardless, before 2023, there was, it was unsafe anyway.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how to explain it more than you grieve every day. And every day you have just that tinge of sadness that follows you around. Some days are worse than others. Some days we cry. Sometimes we talk about it. And I think because Sudanese people are so resilient, they tend not to try their best not to dwell on it. And so you kind of you're bottling up your grief in a way and trying to be like, okay, but what can I do to help? So grief turns into, what is the actionable plan? What more can I do? Yeah. And I treat it that way. I'm very much kind of like, oh, what else can I do? How else can I help? But I'm really sad. Like, I'm really, really sad that I can't go home.
Yeah.
And I'm really sad for my parents. I'm really sad for my grandparents. I'm sad for everyone. Kind of getting emotional, but I don't want to talk about a podcast.
Sorry.
But it's really sad. It's sad to think that it'll never be again. And we live in that grief, and it's lived experience now, and it is what it is, and we just have to make the most of it. And we also have to hope that one day our children's children, our children's children's children will get to go back to a Sudan. And that hope is what kind of keeps us alive. And it's like, maybe one day. I don't know if it's going to be one day soon, but I would hope that one day for our children's children, there'll be a Sudan again. But for now, it's utter sadness. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah.
I want to hold your hand.
I'm so sorry.
We can take 5 minutes if you want.
It's okay.
You sure?
It's like quite hard to like.
Of course.
Of course.
Yeah, it's not a tissue.
Yeah.
So obviously there's been a lot of attention and social media coverage on not just this conflict, but across Gaza, Congo, and even more so now mainstream media covering Sudan.
Yeah.
What is it like as a displaced person or with someone with displaced family to be viewing that on your social media feed every day?
It's a really weird way of saying it. I like it. I think it's important. I think if we had, I think if this had been pre-social media era, no one would have known what's going on. I actually don't think we would have been able to fundraise or do anything in the same way. I think when it's in your face and it's on socials, it is undeniable. So if it's undeniable, then you, I think as a person, then are able to question and be like, okay, what can I do?
Yeah.
I think it's like anything, like human behavior is like, if I don't know, I can't do anything about it, or I don't care. Whereas this is like, you can't not care because it's right there. And so actually I think every single time I scroll and I see someone who maybe isn't Sudanese actually posts about Sudan, it makes me really proud that I'm following that person.
Yeah.
And that person would care about me or my family or my life without me having to say to them, hey, can you care? So whenever I do scroll, and if anyone posts about Sudan, considering how much is going on in the world right now and how somewhat hard it is to pick which cause or whatever that means, I think that whenever I see it, and especially because I see it from people that I follow, I don't know, it makes me really proud of those people to care. And even if people always like, what's the point in posting on socials? But I fully disagree with that. I don't get angry at people for not posting, because I think everyone has their own whatever situations going on for them personally. But posting on socials does make a difference, because awareness makes a difference, because awareness changes laws and changes people's lives and creates a conversation. So even if one person, it's just like you guys doing this podcast, you might have listeners, viewers who don't know anything about Sudan, but this just starts a conversation.
100%.
And so if we can start the conversation, the next part of the conversation is like, okay, what can I do? And the next part of that is like, where can I send my money? there's always the next thing to be able to do.
Yeah.
So I actually am fully for seeing things on socials. It's hard, don't get me wrong, it's hard to see.
Yeah.
And sometimes I do get emotional, and sometimes I do cry, and sometimes I'm just like in bed and feel like I need to like put my phone down for a second and take a minute. But that's really selfish of me, actually, because I can take a minute.
Yeah.
And I have the privilege of taking a minute. So then I think to myself, if I'm able to take a minute, I wish for them that they could, but they can't.
Yeah.
So I try my best to be like, yeah, it's hard to take in, but it's important to take in. And because I'm privileged, actually. I'm super privileged to be in this position. So if the least I can do is see it on socials.
That's such a great way of putting it, because social media does have such power.
Yes, such power.
And like it can reach people, and like you say, information is key in this, and just like more people know, then the more they can talk about it.
It does make posting does make a difference. Everyone's like, oh, reposting someone's post, what's that really going to do? Of course it makes a difference. It raises awareness. Awareness changes actual laws. Like that's the whole point in awareness. If we didn't have whole organizations that focus on this stuff, if we didn't care about awareness, we wouldn't have PR companies, because that's the whole point. It's to raise awareness for things, like sell things or tell people about things. So it does make a difference. So for anyone who's just like, oh, like what's the point of me posting? You'd be surprised. You're probably educating someone who didn't know anything about it. And if that's the little you can do, it's not a lot.
Yeah. When you look up figures, like there was one from the UNHCR saying that they're 29%, they only have 29% of funding that they need out of 100. And if you think like, if you're sharing one reputable source story along, and that's one donation, like it's just like a chain. It's so easy to like, it used to be word of mouth, hearing about these things, or people like going around collecting donations. Nowadays we can click a button on our phones.
Click a button, your Apple Pay will put it. It will do it. No excuse. There's literally no excuse. And that's the thing. I think organizations like the UNHCR, people are like, oh, they must have so much money, they're so fine, like supported by the UN, blah blah blah. But it's like, no, that's like not the case. Like 25, it's such a small amount. I also don't think any money is enough money. If you're thinking about 12,000 people that are displaced, but
12
like
million.
There, like this is 12 million. Sorry, I'm like 12 people. 12 million people. Like it's so many people. If we put it into context of just what London has, like 7 million. So think of like London being like all of London being displaced, 100%. And then some. You know, so like it's not like it's like the whole more than double of Scotland being displaced. Scotland doesn't even have that many people in it. So in concept, it's like it's a crazy amount of people that need support. There is not one organization doesn't have that amount of money to support 12 million people, and then think of the amount of other people they support in other causes in the world. Organizations like this, you can go on the website and you can understand where your money's going. Like it's not like they're hiding it from you.
I was going to ask, and I obviously don't want to trigger you or anything like that, but generational trauma is a thing. I guess your family have experienced like some really distressing things. Like, do you feel like you say you live grief every day, but like is there still a sense of that in your everyday work? Like, do you feel like you have to dedicate a lot of your life and your career to your country, your home, because there isn't that attention on it that needs to be? It's
a really interesting question.
And if it's too deep, I'm sorry.
No, it's not too deep at all. It's something I have been struggling with a lot recently. It's actually weirdly a conversation I actually had even last night with a friend. They sent me something and they're like, oh, these people are looking, this NGO are looking for Sudanese artists for something. And I turned around to her and I was like, you know, like I don't know if I can dedicate my entire career to just fundraising for Sudan and for this to be my sole focus. Like I feel really, really conflicted about it. I do a lot of fundraising. I do as much as I can physically do, but also fundraising, I'm not surviving on fundraising for other things. I also need to earn money. I also need to grow. I also need to develop. I also need my career to move forward. So it is hard because since things have happened in Sudan, so much of my mentality and my work and everything has become thinking about Sudan. And to a sense, it's hard to say, but in a sense it is a detriment to my career, because it means I'm not focusing maybe on like, oh, doing another Instagram post of this thing, or like getting that brand deal, or doing a pitch deck for this thing. In my head I'm like, what am I doing? I should be doing this thing for Sudan.
But isn't that a little bit of survivor's guilt? Like
100% it's survivor's guilt.
like you still have a life that you're entitled to
100%.
live.
But how do you
Yeah.
make peace with that? And it's something that I'm literally, as we were talking about it, it's trying to figure it out in real time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to figure out in real time sort of how to, especially over this last couple of weeks actually, how do I also not martyr myself to the cause, where it becomes the only thing that I care about, so then I can't focus. I do definitely think in a lot of my work, I made a short film recently, and I think that it's influenced by the idea of like, we have to also preserve our culture and our rituals, and sort of, as a filmmaker and as a creative, I want to make work that eventually I can pass on to the next generation and be like, this is what we had and this is who we were. Like my film's about henna and the ritual of henna, and it's such an important part of our culture. And so I do think there's a responsibility to want to sort of immortalize our rituals and traditions.
Yeah.
That leads quite nicely onto like one of the questions I had, which was like, what role do you think that storytelling has in preserving a country's culture, you know, from filmmaking and music?
I think a huge role. I think actually, for me, that's what storytelling is. It's not just commemorating the old, it's creating newness from the oldness, and it's creating new stories, but it's also, again, sort of keeping these stories that we once had. I think a lot of music, especially Sudan, we have such a love for music and a love for dance, and it's a very joyous country, it's a very joyous culture. So a lot of that is sort of like the young generation making new sounds out of the sounds that were, and making sure that people know about our sounds. As a filmmaker, I think it's really important that the work that I do, not all of it, but a lot of it, is influenced by my culture and my heritage. So I think storytelling, even, to be honest, even for raising money, like you have to storytell, you have to humanize things, and you have to make people understand. And I think as the diaspora, it is absolutely is our duty to make sure that we try our best to celebrate who we are, and so that people know, and so that, if Sudan doesn't come back for a long time, that we have something to look at, something to look to. So when another Sudanese artist does anything, whether it's music or art, whatever it is, I'm always so excited, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool, because it's our responsibility. Like our parents and our grandparents, they did what they could do. They did it pretty well, but it's now our responsibility to take that Trojan horse and be like, okay, what can we do with this? And I feel a huge sense of responsibility in what I'm doing. But again, it sort of goes back to that same thing of like, at what point do you get to move forward as well?
Yeah.
And does everything you do as a creative have to be influenced by who you are or where you're from, especially when you come from conflict and you feel a responsibility? Again, I do not know. Something I'm trying to figure out. And I haven't quite figured out morally where I stand with it yet. So I don't know.
The family and friends that you have that are still in Sudan, or the people that you know that are displaced, do they have questions for like what's going on outside? Like, do they wonder, are things being done? Like, are people fundraising for us? Is the aid, like, to put it horribly, is the aid coming? Like,
yeah, I mean, luckily in my part, most, let's say 90%, 95% of my family have all now left Sudan.
Okay.
And are either in Cairo, the UAE, all around the world, wherever they can get to, sort of. But predominantly most in Cairo. You know, it's weird. Sudanese people aren't grabby by nature. Our culture is very much like the more you have, the more you give. And so that's always a thought I've grown up with, which is like, oh, if you have, you should give. And so there's never been a sense of, well, we need and we want.
Yeah.
I have never, ever had a conversation with a Sudanese person that's been displaced and they've said, hey, so where's the money going? Or we need money, or can you help us? No one has ever asked me for help. Wow. I've just helped.
Yeah.
I think at the stage when I was fundraising to organize some buses at the very beginning of the war, I outreached to some friends and I said, if you have families who have anyone who's disabled or elderly, like, I want to help. And they would be like, oh, can I bring my cousin? Is there space on the bus for my cousin? Is there space on the bus for whatever? That was at the very beginning, and that's the most anyone's ever asked of me, which is crazy to think about it. They don't ask for help. That's the thing. That's what's crazy about it. It's not like a grabby culture where they're like, help us. No no one's asking for help, but it doesn't mean that they don't need it.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. I think that is the main thing that we're trying to bring it back to. Like, this is so human. This could happen to anyone at any point.
Yeah.
And it could be family, it could be friends of family. And like, there just shouldn't, we should move away from that them versus us mentality.
100%.
And I guess, I just like even reading about the women that have been exposed to like the gender-based violence and things like when money and funding isn't having the money to go into programs and things like that, then where are they left? I'm sure that like their lives just be elevated and they don't even know it. And it's like we know how good we can get it in these kind of situations of desperation here. It's just it must be so hard to live every day just like knowing
that you have nowhere to turn. There's nowhere to go.
There's nowhere to go.
Yeah, there's nowhere to turn. There's nowhere to go. That's why the organizations like this are so important.
Yeah.
Because it's just a lifeline to have somewhere to turn.
Yeah.
Like, you're right. We live in the UK, or people that live in like this part of the world. Like, you can go to your government, you can go to your local council, you can go to charity.
Such a privilege.
It's such a privilege that we are absolutely spoiled in the amount of support we have, that we don't realize what it's like to wake up and be like, oh, I can't ring my doctor, or I can't get this thing, or I can't go to a food bank, or I literally can't do anything. Like, I think if you just think about it, like sort of waking up in the morning and being like, okay, I just need to survive another day. Okay, I just need to get through another day.
Yeah.
Like, this is literally day-to-day survival.
Yeah.
It's like, it's no joke. So I think that, I don't think people compute what it's like to just be surviving day to day.
No, yeah.
I mean, on a personal level, how are your family doing at the moment?
They're okay. I think there's a lot of, I think there's weirdly like a lot of moving forward and a lot of grief at the same time. People are graduating now. People are getting married. People are trying to move on. I think for a lot of us here, especially like sort of in the West, as we like to call it, I think the grief is sort of so ingrained that there is a level of sadness that we all just sort of have with each other. And I think, you know, people have like crazy insomnia and, you know, health issues, and just like the grief can be all encompassing and it can come out in different ways. You know, my great aunt passed away a few days ago, and I remember thinking, gosh, if she was allowed to die in Sudan, imagine the funeral that she would have had, and imagine the people that would have come and said goodbye, and imagine, you know, we would have got to celebrate this life of a woman who ran schools and NGOs in Sudan and supported hundreds of thousands of people. She was an incredible person, and yet she's passed away, and we just have to send a text message or do a phone call because we can't even really celebrate her life. And so there's this generation. It must be really sad. I can't even compute how sad it must be to be at the end of your life and you're not even getting to rest your head where you had your life. And you are somewhere, wherever you've ended up, and how sad that is that life has ended up this way. It sounds awful, but I'm almost grateful that my grandparents weren't alive to see this, and they got to die in their homes, and they didn't have to live to see with the Sudan that they had thrived and put so much into and grown so much into. They didn't have to see the Sudan that is now, because for my parents, it's soul destroying. I can see it in their eyes. I can see it in their faces. That's their whole childhood. It's their whole adulthood. It's everything they've ever known. Is up in flames. And so I don't know. It's a hard question. How are my family?
Loaded.
It's a loaded question, and it has so many feelings that I think I can't really encompass it into like one feeling. It's just there. It's just dread. But we still we move on. Every day's a new day, and every day's a day where you can be like, okay, what am I doing today? What can I do today? And I'm trying, even personally, my hardest to be like, okay, I need to soften how hard I am on myself. About how much I could or couldn't do. I think really, really honestly, if I can be this honest, it's just like, my work has really suffered in the last 2 years. Because my focus has always been like, okay, what more can I do? Okay, maybe I could do this fundraiser. Okay, maybe I can do this post. Or maybe I can edit this video. Maybe I can do... And so I just feel this overdrive of constantly doing things about Sudan, which I think my work has suffered from it. But I don't regret it, because I've also been able to help hundreds of people. It's just... I think no one knows where to go next or what to do next.
And I can't even imagine the mental battle you have with yourself every day, being displaced, thinking like... There's a chance maybe I could come back here in 2 months. or maybe I should plan ahead just in case I can't come back here in 2 years. And then there's 20 years that have passed, and it's like, oh, like I can never go home.
You're so right though. It's really funny that you say that, because my cousin had that conversation. I was in Cairo and I was with her. She was like, do you want to go and look at this flat with me? And I was like, yeah. They needed a bigger place. There's so many of them because they're now also generationally living in the same places. And she was like, yeah, but I don't want to sign on to a year lease. And I was like, why? And she was like, because maybe we'll go back within a year. And I was like, well, you're not going back within a year. But I didn't know how to sort of say that to her.
Of course, yeah.
And I remember the landlord was like, actually, I really need you to sign on for 2. And she was like, no, but I think we'll go back in a year. And I was like, you're not going back in a year. But I can't say that to her. And I didn't have the bravery to say, you're not going home. So they live in the hope that they will go home. And so you kind of have to, you're getting emotional. It's making me cry.
Sorry, it's awful. It's just, it's really, sorry, I just can't even imagine. Like, it's like not having an end point.
Yeah, there's no end point.
Of like this thing that's happened that's so bigger than you and like affects you every single day. And like, just going about your everyday, going back to uni, having to do classes when it's like, oh my God, the place that I grew up in, my family, I don't even know if they're like surviving or thriving. Sorry, it's really,
no, it's true though, but that really is it. Like, you have to be like, you have to still make life worth living. And you have to find a way to make life worth living. And I think that is the grace of Sudanese people, that they find a way. Like, I'm so proud of my cousin who sent me a graduation photo the other day, and we had graduated. And so you just have to find a way. You have to look to what it can be eventually. And we do have that, and we all can. And that is credit to the people. They find a way. They find a way to make it happen, to make it work. And if they can, and then we can do something to support that.
I mean, that's the aim with like getting the emergency assistance that they need. But it's not just that. It's making sure they can live the rest of their lives with dignity, with the power that they had when they were a baby. Like, they weren't a child and their parents had aspirations for them, thinking, God, this is going to happen to me when I'm 18. Like, you
just don't know. Life changes in a flash, right? And it did for them, and it's not fair.
Well, we've obviously spoke about the power of social media in terms of bringing attention to the conflict, the crisis, the people that need help. Where would you recommend is a good place to start with that for someone that is maybe avoids looking at things like that, because it is distressing, it is a lot, but to get information from a trusted source, what would you recommend?
I mean, I actually think socials are a really, really good way to do that. I know sometimes it can be overwhelming looking at news stories, and it's very newsy and it's quite hard to understand, and these 2 warlords and all this kind of information is like quite hard to understand and compute. But if you go to socials and you find just those influencers that can tell you things and you can learn and follow day to day. I even follow quite a lot of influencers. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that was happening on the ground, or I didn't know, like, I'm not the oracle of all the news, but like, I will do it in the way that I can do it. But there are plenty of sources, and TikTok is pretty incredible in the way it just like feeds you stuff once you start watching stuff. So I do definitely think that I would love for people to look at their feeds and make sure their feeds are not just pure like joy in socials, but also make sure that you're learning. And like, you'd be so surprised that if you sort of alter your socials so that you are learning new information as you're scrolling, it's a good way to start. And it's a good way to just be like, oh, I'm informed. And then I can talk about this and I can have a conversation about this. I would love for people just to be like, did you know that? Da, 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 and just have a conversation about it. It's not, you don't have to be like, if I don't know, I can't talk about it. And I think that's what scares people. I don't know enough about this, so I can't talk about it. But you know, basically that humans need help. And that you can support. And so I would love for people to sort of take away that I don't know and replace it with, well, what can I learn? You know,
incredible.
That's a really lovely way to put it, isn't it? Like encouraging people to learn more, and just
no one's mad at you for not knowing.
No, exactly. You know,
it's fine. It's okay. You just gotta everyone can start somewhere. Again, we talk about being a child. Like, children didn't know, but you can start somewhere, and you just like eventually you pick it up, and eventually you're able to have the conversation. And it's not as complicated as you think. And if it is too complicated, put the complicated aside and just look at the humans and look 100%. At what the humans need. and start there. Like there's loads of different things you can learn, but they're such beautiful, soft, warm people, and they deserve support after what's happened to them.
Yeah.
So
100%. And I'm so grateful today we've had the opportunity to partner with UK for UNHCR to be able to understand the roots and the sources of where we can get that information and be able to donate and actually help
and
beautiful people.
To learn more about you and your family. And
thank you so much,
amazing.
Basma.
No, I actually also to say, like, it takes a lot for you guys who were like, oh, we don't know all the facts and figures of this, and to be able to be like, no, but we want to talk about it and it's important.
100%.
And it starts with people like you, and it starts with audiences like yours to be like, okay, I didn't know about this, but this is good, and now I've learned something new, and I appreciate you guys taking the time to sort of be like, I want to learn. And I think that starts a conversation. So thank you to you guys.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure having
It's
you.
been
Thank you
such a
so much.
pleasure.
Thank
We've
you.
loved having you, Basma.
Thank you for joining us.
Cheers and all.
Did you want to plug any of your socials or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same on all my socials. I'm at Basma Khalifa on LinkedIn and on Instagram. I will start using my TikTok a little bit more, but mainly Instagram and LinkedIn.
You can help people caught in this crisis by searching UK for UNHCR Help Sudan Today.
And of course, all the necessary links that you might need will be down in our description, so make sure you check those out. And of course, please like and share this episode with your friends, people you know, so we can all help raise awareness.